Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Ben Talks About. I'm of course your host, Ben Contreras, and this is the show where I talk about stuff that most people aren't talking about anymore simply due to the fact that I feel like it. As you can no doubt see, I am back from my 2 billion year long hiatus from this channel to return to talk about a certain subject that I have quite the unique opinion on, and that is related to the well, not so much recently, but the more or less recently released game in the LEGO franchise, that being LEGO Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga. As you can tell from what I got here, I got the PS4 version, more or less because that's the version that I opted for, because I don't have a PS5, and I still don't feel like I'm all that motivated to actually get one. But yeah, this game is more or less a compilation of all 9 major films in the now Disney's Star Wars franchise, all culminated into one large game. Now, I'm kind of surprised that they decided to do this now, especially considering they had not taken that long to release a game that was simply based around Star Wars: The Force Awakens when that first came out. But here we are with the actual game itself, which not only covers the rest of the sequel trilogy, but as well as the previous six films in the Star Wars franchise. And on paper, this seems like it would be one of the largest and most well put together LEGO games ever made. However, that paper is incredibly thin paper, because well, personally, I do think that it's a pretty good game. I don't think you should really take the time to get it so much now. There are a lot of things that the game does really well, but I feel like a lot of the other things that the game tries to do is sort of rather contradictory to what we know of for the LEGO games that we all more or less grew up with. If you grew up around the early to mid 2000s, which of course I did. But yeah, overall, this is not necessarily a full-on complete review of it, because I'm not technically finished with the entire game. I've gotten around past the first 3 episodes, I want to say, but I still feel like that is more or less enough to give me a sort of quote-unquote first impressions video on it. I've had the game for quite a while now, and I've played through, like I said, the first major portion of the game, and for the most part, this game is very much the most different out of any of the LEGO games that we've seen, very specifically in the Star Wars franchise, because for this is one of the first few. I'm not quite sure if LEGO Star Wars: The Force Awakens did the same thing, but this game is unique as there is the entirety of the Star Wars franchise that you get to explore around in a more of an open world style, where you go through all the different locations you see from the movies, and you go around and interacting with the different environments, different locations, different characters, and all of that, in order to get through the portions of the film that they have adapted into the game. Of course, there are, the sections where, there's enemies to fight, there's puzzles to solve, there are areas where you fly around in space, and of course you also have the cutscenes that give the plot of each of the movies that sort of LEGO humor that these games have been known for more or less since the very beginning. And while all that is very, again, it's very well on paper, but the fact that it is in this sort of seamless kind of open world style is really something that makes the game seem like it's longer than it actually is. The actual missions themselves aren't necessarily levels, as they are more or less objectives that follow the structure of the movie. For example, when you first start off the game, you get the choice of playing through either the prequel movies, which is episode 1, 2, and 3 first, the original trilogy 4, 5, and 6 first, or the sequel trilogy of 7, 8, and 9 first. And you unlock all the other episodes as you go along the story. So, for example, if you go through the episode 1, the first area you start exploring is the beginning of the movie where Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are going into the Trade Federation's space station to go through the opening scene of the movie where their ship blows up and they have to do all the battle droids and all of that. But rather than having it as a actual level, it's more or less just one interactive cutscene, because you go through it and you can get through that area in almost a matter of minutes. Whereas a lot of the previous games they made it so that they were full-on levels. They felt like they had a bit more substance to them. Whereas this one, again, it seemed like it's more or less you making your way towards each area to get the next piece of the story. And I feel like that is one of the sort of flaws with the game, is that it feels like they put more effort into trying to get you to the next part of the story rather than making it as much of a actual like game that you play through, rather than a series of admittedly well put together cutscenes with humor that does hit rather well, but other times not so much. It feels like they put more emphasis on that rather than the actual gameplay of it. The overall gameplay is very much more action-oriented compared to the previous LEGO games, which were more based around platforming and puzzle solving. There are a lot more times where you're fighting a large horde of enemies with being able to have different abilities with each character, having there being different character classes that all specialize in different moves, and you're able to get skill points which allow you to make the character stronger, and all of that. And there is a very large variety of characters. This is probably one of the largest rosters for any LEGO game that we've seen before, but it feels like a lot of the characters are very much cut from the exact same cloth. Like, for example, there could be one specific Jedi character who plays exactly the same as another Jedi character, aside from the fact that their figure is different and their combos are slightly different. There isn't really that much that really separates all of them from the rest, aside from what's already established in their specific like character archetype that they're trying to be. It feels like a lot of the characters are used to more or less fill in a character slot rather than giving you the motivation to actually play as them. Because I guarantee that there are a lot of times where there are characters where you basically have absolutely no reason to play them or unlock them, because you already have a character who does that job already does that job well enough that you can get simply by going through the story. So overall, I feel like the more or less the story mode aspect of the game is not necessarily bad, but it does feel like they put a bit too much emphasis on the fact that it is open world. But I feel like it could have been handled a lot better in a way. I feel like if they made the stages more like actual stages and sort of extended the length of them and gave you more of a motivation to play as certain characters, I feel like it would have been done a lot better. However, where I do think this game does shine is when you're not going through any of the story, because being able to explore the different planets in the Star Wars universe in the sort of free roaming sort of mode that the game has, where all of the objectives from the story mode of the game are completely gone and you're free to just go around and interact with the different characters on each of the different planets. I feel like that's where the game sort of shines, because it allows you to look through to actually explore areas that you may have completely passed by to get to the next cutscene in the story mode. I feel like they put a lot of effort into that aspect of the game. There are a lot of NPC characters who have some interesting things to say. They have nods to all the previous films. There are a lot of hidden Easter eggs to the previous Lego Star Wars games that are very nice touches, and as well as being there being references to a lot of the other franchises that the Lego games have done before. I won't go into too much in terms of that, in case you don't want to get spoiled and you want to find the secrets yourself. I myself haven't even found all of the secrets, but I do feel like they put a lot of effort into making you want to explore the areas freely after you complete the story mode in a specific episode, and as you go through the story mode of each episode, more and more planets get unlocked, and it ends up being a very, very large world that allows you to explore it however you want to, and that gives you more. I feel like that aspect, I feel like they did rather well, and it allows you to, I feel like that gives you more of a motivation to play through the different characters when you're not going through the major portion of the game that, I feel like they put more of an emphasis on that. So I found going through the planets to just sort of mess around with all the different side quests that you can do and interacting with the different characters. I felt like that was more fun than going through the actual episodes in their actual story order. I feel like that was more fun, but then again, I'm the kind of person who likes exploring open world games. I'm the kind of person whose one of their absolute favorite games of all time is Skyrim, and that game is entirely based around there being an open world and interacting with different characters. So I am sort of a sucker for that kind of thing. But I feel like when it comes to the Lego games, they've never really done something like this where it's a huge seamless open world, especially for a world as big as the Star Wars universe. Even if it is just based on the movies that we have, there is still a lot to explore there, and I feel like that was really interesting. But I feel like it's one of those type of games where you have to be in a certain mood to play it, because it's the kind of game where you have to realize that you're going to be spending a lot of time doing things that you would prefer not to necessarily do to get to the parts that you will have a lot more time spent on it, if that makes any sense. Now, that's not necessarily making the game bad. I still feel like the game is very much fun to play. The gameplay works perfectly fine. While a lot of the stages are very short, a lot of stages that I feel like they put much more effort in, I feel like those were really fun to do, and the fact that there are segments of the game that the previous Lego Star Wars games didn't go through, I feel like that was a really nice touch. Especially for someone who grew up playing not just through the Lego Star Wars Complete Saga, but also all the way back to the very first Lego Star Wars game, all the way back during the GameCube PS2 era. Being able to see these movies in a style that I'm sort of used to, but presented in a different way, I think was really unique. And I feel like I knew for a fact that it wasn't going to be the same type of game that was the one that I personally grew up with, and I wasn't necessarily disappointed by that. I do appreciate a lot of things they tried to add to the game, but like I said, I feel like the previous Lego Star Wars games did a better job at making the games more fun, not quite sure if fun to play through would be the correct choice of words for me, but it does feel like there is a lot more. I just feel like the game is filled with a lot of stuff that is really good, but also a lot of stuff that I feel like they could have put a lot more effort into it. So overall, I still do very much like this game, and if you are a Lego Star Wars fan and grew up playing a lot of the other Lego games, I do feel like this would be a great addition to your collection. But I believe the game might still be at full price at $60, so unless you don't mind spending that amount of money for it, you probably might want to wait for a price drop on this one. I don't normally give rankings to games. Overall, I just feel like if you're a fan of open world style games like Skyrim or Grand Theft Auto, and you're a fan of the Lego series in general, I would just say yeah, I could recommend this to you. But if you're looking for a much more more condensed experience that is a little bit more fun and more exhilarating to play, you're probably better off getting some of the previous games like Lego Star Wars: The Complete Saga, which you can get for very cheap nowadays because the game is like how many years old at this point. But overall, I hope that this video was informative enough and I didn't stumble through too many of my lines, even though I know for a fact that I did. But again, I hope you all enjoyed this little return to Ben Talks About with me, of course, your host, Ben Contreras, where, again, I talk about stuff that most people aren't really talking about anymore, simply due to the fact that I feel like it. If you enjoyed this video, just go ahead and just leave a like, comment, all that kind of stuff. If you haven't subscribed yet, go right ahead if you want to. So, until I see you all next time with whatever game I decide to play or whatever subject I decide to talk about, I'm Ben Contreras, and bye.